Yes.
Hey everyone, welcome to Reels and Heels. I am your host today. I get to take over the show. Brian and Nicole are off to go see a wrestling show tonight, so tune in next week for their update on how the show went. I'm excited. So sorry you guys are stuck with me, but I have my friend DJ, who
Evening or afternoon, everyone.
who used to be a wrestler. So I think this is a good switch up.
I'm very glad to be here. Excited. Thank you for having me. I know we've talked about this. I was on your show, Willow's Pillow Talk, here a couple months back, and we had talked about this.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to be out here with you tonight or today.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
God, this day feels like it's already like 10 hours long, and it's only 2:00.
I'm glad that you had somewhat of a fun day, but like it sounds like you had an interesting day though.
It was like I told you, I was literally right down to the minute with sitting in my chair and getting on live with you, because just everything we had going on this morning took us right down to the wire.
But I'm glad that you made it. It's okay. I would have probably held back on the show a little bit longer if you were running late. So
no, I appreciate that. I don't like holding people. I don't like to be late. That's my toxic trait. I don't like to be late anywhere. I'm always the first one to work, and they rely on me to open up the building now. And they're like, I don't understand how you get here so early. I'm like, I'm
the same way. Like I will show up to work half an hour early, and people are like, "Why do you show up so early?" I'm like, we work at a coffee shop. I'm here for the coffee, not for you guys."
Absolutely, yeah. If I worked in a coffee shop, I'd probably be the first one in the door too.
But yeah, no. So yeah, that's me. Like anytime that I have a meeting with people, usually I'm the first one to show up. And
yeah. Let me share this out here real quick.
Yeah, no worries. So, it being the Halloween season, do you guys have any decorations up right now?
Funny you should talk about that. I have been, over the last few years, been trying to accumulate some Halloween decorations. With different things, finances just weren't there. This year I had a little extra spending money. So we have a Spirit of Halloween store that came around this year. Well, they come around, pretty much everywhere locally.
Yeah.
But we went there last weekend, and I picked up some little tombstone things and, some moss and stuff. I'm going to do a little mini graveyard in the front yard. And then I got a smoke machine that I'm going to let run. And that's probably going to be the extent of it this year. And then what I'm going to do is slowly next year, I'll buy some more and then, build it up to where at least my front yard looks like something.
Yeah. That's kind of how I plan it. Definitely want I won a scarecrow animatronic a couple years ago from one of my friends' fundraisers.
That's fun.
It's funny how people will look at it and the eyes will start glowing and it'll talk, and people are like, "No, I don't want to enter that yard." And it's like, the thing's not gonna move.
That's funny.
It just talks.
How is Thanksgiving? Because I know you being in Canada, I'm sure it gets rather cold around Halloween. How are trick-or-treaters around that time? Are they still fairly well in costume, or is everybody trying?
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, we've invented the whole, make sure that your costume is like 4 times bigger because it has to fit over your coat,
right?
Your winter coat. But as of late, like our winters have been starting a little bit later. It seems October seems to have like this hit and miss. 1 year it'll be nice and warm. The next year will be like cold and rainy.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen snow in October in like 4 years,
Oh, wow.
but you know,
Now, is that a
You know-
rarity, or were you used
You
to
know
getting
what?
snow that early in the season?
we're that's the weird thing. Like, unfortunately, I don't know what the norm is, but I remember, it being from the 90s having like waist deep of snow going trick or treating.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
And which Comic-Con is now is around Halloween, and I'm excited because I don't have to go to Comic-Con wearing a heavy coat.
Yeah. I lived in New York City about 12 years ago, and I moved back right before, because I was only there for about 13 months. And the first year I was there, Comic-Con was in, and I missed it just because I was so busy getting myself settled and kind of entrenched into, New York City lifestyle, that by the next time Comic-Con came around, I was ready to go. I was like, this is it. This is New York City Comic-Con. This is, for us, between this one and I think San Francisco, those are the two big ones in the U.S. I'm like, I'm definitely going to New York City Comic-Con. And then just life got in the way, and I ended up moving back a couple months early. I think their con starts, I think it's the end of September into October, and I moved back home in July. So I missed it, so.
But I mean, you guys have several cool shows down in Florida, and
we do. We have MegaCon in Orlando, which is nice. My girlfriend and I went to that several years ago, and that was a hell of a good time. There's a couple others in the area, but the one that I think of most is MegaCon in Orlando.
Yeah. I know that there's was it a couple of weeks ago, my co-host went to a horror convention, Phantasm.
Yes. Yeah. There's that one, and there's a steampunk community that is trying to get a kind of a convention thing going. And we went to, I'm trying to think of it, because with COVID and the pandemic and everything, just like everybody, it's still 2019, in my head. And when I think about things that we did, I'm like, yeah, we did that. That was 2019. We didn't just do that. So, but yeah, the last time, because we do the Renaissance Festival here locally every year.
Okay.
And then there were people passing around flyers for a steampunk type of thing, which we really wanted to do. It was that year we went to two different Renaissance festivals. There was the Brevard County Renaissance Festival and then the Florida Renaissance Festival down in Miami. We did both of those, and just, we spent whatever money we were going to spend between those two festivals. We didn't end up making it to the steampunk one, but I think this year, if they do it again, I want to try and make that.
Yeah, steampunk is a great thing. Like we have a steampunk thing here, that community that I am a part of, and the woman who holds the little festivals here, me and her talk constantly, and there was one time where she's like, okay, I want to do this, and she has all these great ideas, and I'm just like, okay, let's work on one, and then we can focus on the
one at a time here. Let's put it all in order. That's funny.
But it's funny how the people who create these events are all have these huge ambitions to do all this, and it's just like, okay, let's focus on one thing at a time, and then we can focus on bringing in these other little things, so that
you got to get the foundation laid before you can start doing all the other little things.
But I think I'm the one who kind of brings her back down to ground level.
That's awesome. That's good. Yeah, steampunk's fun. I love the Renaissance festivals here. The one here in Brevard's, obviously, because we're not a big metro area or a big city or anything like that. It's smaller. Like my girlfriend, she lived out in the Midwest, and she was used to the Colorado Ren Festival, which apparently is huge. Apparently there's a huge one in Texas as well. So, for this one, it's a little more modest than what she's been used to, but it's still a lot of fun for a great little local thing. We got, a lot of national vendors. If you want to buy costumes and things like that, we get some really good musical acts and entertainment. So for what they can do here, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think the problem we have here in Winnipeg is like we have so many people who are into the costuming thing, but we like our steampunk is not as built up as it is down in the States, where you have people actually building like large vehicles that that light up. And as much as I'd love to do something like that, just the time and effort and
it's Tina makes costumes. Like she's made her sister's wedding dress, and her first wedding, she made her own bridesmaid dresses and things like that, and she's made costumes over the years for us. But for everything that we want to do, it's so time consumptive for her to put all this together. It's I don't want to say it's cheaper for us to just go to the Renaissance festivals and buy the costumes, but it's when you figure in cost plus time, it's probably cheaper to just go ahead and do it. And it's a shame because she loves making costumes. It's just between work and kids and life. Where do you have time to do all that?
Exactly. Like, I do not put down anybody who does like the costume in a bag thing, because hey, I go to secondhand stores, and the best way to do any steampunk costume is go to a secondhand store, buy a vest, buy a pair of slacks, and just like kind of modify your outfit to suit your needs. And so I don't really sew.
Yeah.
it's all piece together costumes. So no, I love it though. It's like you can be creative, but you don't have to spend a whole lot of money doing it.
Right. Well, you figure with steampunk, it's a dystopian, type of theme anyway. So you're not necessarily wearing your best and brightest clothes. Yeah. You're wearing whatever you could, like you said, whatever you can piece together. And that's the theme of the whole thing.
Yeah. But I mean, like with other costumes, like if I dress up as a superhero or whatever, I took a Princess Leia costume and made that my Mystique costume from X-Men. So
modify what you can, do what you can with it. Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 tops that I switch out amongst different. Like she's got a very she made us some black, and I can't even really describe them, but they were these Renaissance festival, and they're very like semi-formal, just like a vest, and then and she had her peasant blouse and everything like that. But the top and the pants I can rotate out and put in with my steampunk stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very interchangeable, and it saves a hell of a lot of money and time.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I like about collecting costume pieces is you get an idea of what you want for one costume, and then you're like, hey, I need this for this costume.
Yep.
So I'm very much that way as well. And it's funny because a lot of my outfits that I wear on an everyday thing ends up becoming a piece for my costumes later.
Yeah, I try to be if I'm buying, like if I'm going to spend money on like accessories, like I bought these bracers that I can probably swap out with about 4 different costumes. Like I can wear it with my steampunk and it fits just fine. I can wear it with I have like the whole kilt and the vest and the whole thing that I do with that. I've worn it with that. It's so when I'm buying those little accessories, I'm like, okay, I don't want this for just one particular costume. Can I wear this with multiple costumes? And I'll ask Tina, I'll say, look, what do you think? 1, do you like it? And 2, can I wear it with something else? And, just again, because costuming and, these things can be expensive. And so you've got to, make the best use of your money. And that's what we try to do.
And yes, like Spirit Halloween can be a little pricey, but sometimes if you go like the day after Halloween, they have all these really nice sales. And I think that's where a lot of like my decorations come from too.
Yeah, they were picked clean today. I went in looking I need the juice for my smoke machine because it's you've got the smoke machine that will make the smoke, but then you've got the smoke that does like the low lying smoke that just kind of crawls across the ground, which is what I wanted for my graveyard scene. Well, they had the machine, but they didn't have the juice last week. So we went back this week to try and find the juice. They still didn't have the juice. And we were talking with the girl at the counter. She's like, yeah, they really didn't give us a whole lot of that this year. So we're going to have to actually, when we're done here, I'm going to try and get online and see if I can order it and have it sent to the house. Yeah. But they were picked clean. And we were just there last weekend, and they had in the center of the store, they had this, and I wanted to buy it, but I didn't have the extra money. These, it's a display of these pumpkins that are stacked, and they have smoke coming out of them, and they light up and everything like that. It was pretty cool. I was looking at that, and they had, the skeletons and all these other things. We went in there today, and none of that was there. Like, there was literally a couple little boxes. Their entire steampunk section was cleaned out. Last week, they had probably 15 or 20 overcoats and hats and all this other stuff. I think they were down to a couple of masks and maybe a couple of canes. So I have a feeling by this time next weekend after Halloween, they're going to have like maybe some plastic false teeth and a tube of fake blood by the time it's all said and done.
Well, a local secondhand, well, it's not really local. I mean, it's a chain, but one of the secondhand stores that I go to, Value Village, they have like their own costume selection too. And so every now and then I'll go there and look at what they have for decorations or costume pieces and all that. Yeah. I would love to learn how to make wigs, but at the same time, it's like, do I dare even go down that route?
Yeah. That's then you're entering a whole nother world.
Oh yeah. Like,
and
one of my friends is, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, one of my friends is a drag queen, and they will tell me like all the stuff that they go through with their wigs, and I'm just like,
that sounds terrible. I was like, I have a good friend of mine. He lives in Ireland, and it actually, coincidentally, much like you, I met him through YouTube, and he and I became very close friends. Me, him, his family. I've met them a few times. They've come over to the States in Orlando, and we've hung out a few times with them. Wonderful people. He's an artist, and he's done like a lot of his Halloween decorations. Like, he's made his own headstones and things like that. I'm like, I don't even like, I couldn't imagine being that creative on that level. And his stuff is so authentic and so good looking that I'm jealous. To be honest with you, I'm jealous of it. That I could never in a million years duplicate that kind of creativity. I know. And see, I love how people are like, we'll teach you how to sew. And it's like, yeah, that just requires you to come over to my house. And at some point I probably need to learn to at least put a button on a jacket or something. I can't even sew a button back on.
See, okay, hand sewing is one thing. Like, I can definitely do the hand sewing thing as long as it's like a little, like a button or just like something that needs fixing. But like taking pieces and putting them together, I'm just like my basic sewing skills are so bad.
Thankfully, Tina's pretty good at that. Like, if we ever end up in a dystopian situation, we may starve, but we'll never run out of clothes.
So, okay, when going to your wrestling thing, like, how did you come up with your character for your wrestling persona?
Interestingly enough, when I got into the business, we were training and we were doing our thing, and we were getting to a point where the guy training us was like, okay, I think you guys are ready to start doing shows. So you've done some of your training. You're ready to start your first show. He's like, okay, you guys need a gimmick. And a little bit of the backstory on it. My friend was a little bit further along than I was, mostly because he was going, like, we were supposed to train 2 to 3 times a week, every week. And I was at a weird spot in life where I had a really good job, and he was delivering pizzas. So he had a lot more flexibility with his work schedule than I did. I mean, I had a very definitive, you need to be here and you need to be here. And, I'm very work minded and very work conscious. So I'm like, okay, right now, this pro wrestling thing is costing me money. It's not making me any money. So I'm not going to go crazy with dedicating my life to it, which is, at the end of the day, is a detriment, because if you're going to make it in the pro wrestling industry, it's either 100% or nothing at all. Yeah. Like, and being 25 years old, not even at that time, I didn't understand that. And I wasn't ready to make that kind of commitment. So he was further along in the training and everything than I was. So the idea was, originally he was going to be the wrestler and I was going to be the manager. And it started off, he was going to be Eddie Severn. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ultimate Fighting or anything like that at all. But back in the 90s, it was Ultimate Fighter's name was Dan Severn. And Dan Severn was a pro wrestler. He did like the shoot fighting, the ultimate fighting, but he was also a pro wrestler. He was, I believe, NWA world champion at one point. And Eddie, my friend Eddie, kind of, at least in the face, resembled him. Yeah. So he was going to be Eddie Severn. That lasted about 2 weeks, and we're like, we really don't know what to do with Eddie Severn. So then one day we're at practice, and Cliff comes in. Cliff was the guy who was booking the shows and doing the training. Everything. He said, Eddie, I got an idea. I was sitting on the toilet taking a shit because that's when I do my best thinking. He said, I want you to be Fast Eddie, the pizza delivery guy, which fit right in because he was already a pizza delivery guy. Okay. So we've already got a built-in gimmick. And he said, DJ, you're going to be his manager, Guido. I'm like, okay, well, this is I can do this. I'm part Italian, so it's already, the gimmick's already built in. Yeah. So we were off to the races with that. So the first thing we did was we had to work Eddie. What does a pizza delivery guy do? Well, in 1999, a pizza delivery guy wore like a polo shirt and shorts. So that's what he did. He had the polo shirt and the shorts. He had a hat, and he actually carried around the pizza, because the pizza delivery bag that they deliver him in. He worked for Pizza Hut, so he just brought his Pizza Hut delivery bag with him to the shows. That was part of the gimmick. For me, he looked at me and he said, Guido, because at this point, once I was Guido all the time, whether we were at a show or not. He called me Guido regardless. So he stopped calling me DJ at one point. So he's like, Guido, what I want you to do is I want you to go to Goodwill and find the ugliest suit you can find. And he's like, I want you to find something so ugly that Jim Cornette wouldn't even wear it. And I'm thinking, okay, Jim Cornette used to wear some ugly ass suits. That's going to be a tall tree to climb. So Eddie, myself, and his girlfriend at the time, we all went to Goodwill, and we said, okay, here's what we need to do. We sent her in one direction, him in another direction, and me in another direction. And I was like, okay, Vanessa, you look for shirts. Eddie, you look for jackets, and I'm going to look for pants. And we all three split up, and we went just tearing apart Goodwill, looking for the ugliest shit we could find. And we brought over like shopping carts full of stuff. And just look, okay, comparing this and this, okay, this clashes, this is terrible, this is perfect. And, we ended up with, I think, I'm trying to remember because I had two different suits. I found one even uglier the second time around. But the first one ended up being, I think it was a red pair of pants, some flowery looking, like my Bahamas shirt, and then just this ugly ass green sports coat, and then a blue hat. It was like a blue fedora. And that was it. That was the thing. He's like, okay, this is perfect. And, we got it all together. I think I spent $10 for it all. And, and that was that. And the gimmick really was, he was Fast Eddie, the pizza delivery guy. And, I distracted the referee. He would hit him with the pizza bag. And, we were bad guys. We were heels. So, he would hit him with the pizza bag when the ref's back was turned, and then we'd get the pin. And that was literally the whole gimmick. And it was a hell of a lot of fun.
That is awesome. So did you ever turn from a heel to a babyface at all?
I did, actually. That's a pretty neat story as well. And at some point, I actually have that night saved on my YouTube channel. We'd gone to a show, and the original booking was Eddie was going to work a guy. Dean Malenko had his school over on the West Coast in Tampa, and Cliff would bring in a lot of Malenko's guys, and he had a couple of their students and trainees that were coming over and working some of the shows. But he had one of his guys coming over, and then the original plan was when we got there that night, he's like, okay, Eddie, you're going to be working one of Dean Malenko's guys. Like, okay, great. That Malenko sends over great wrestlers, so this ought to be fun. Well, the guy didn't show. So, and this is like literally like 10 minutes to showtime, and we're like the second match of the card or something like that. So Cliff's got to think of something real quick. He's like, okay, and mind you, I haven't wrestled yet. I've done all the training in the world, but I have yet to wrestle my first match. So Cliff comes up and says, all right, here's what we're going to do. The Malenko guy no-showed. So Eddie, you're going to go to the ring. You're going to cut a promo on Guido. Blame him because we've been on a losing streak at this point. Eddie had lost 2 or 3 matches by this point. So he's going to go out and he's going to cut this promo on me saying he's tired of losing his matches and I'm the reason he's always losing them, which really wasn't a lie, because in the shows, my stupidity cost him a couple of matches. So he's going to go out, he's going to cut this huge promo, and he's like, you're going to get out here and I'm going to kick your ass, and, your standard wrestler promo. So then I go out there and, I'm the manager, he's the wrestler. And, we get in there, and at that point we had the whole crowd just kind of worked into a frenzy over it, because they enjoyed that gimmick because it was ridiculously stupid. And there's an old adage in the wrestling industry that says stupid sells. And it's absolutely the truth. If you can do the most ridiculous thing in the world and then amp it up to 11, you can get it over. And that's what we did. Like, we went full bore with the pizza delivery gimmick. He had the pizza bag. And at one point, if we did happen to win, I was writing out receipts for guys and then dropping the paper receipt on them at the end of the match. It was great. So that was just kind of the thing. And then, he turned on me. We had the match. For what we could do, being a couple of guys literally with less than a year in the business, we blew the roof off the place. The match was not a great wrestling match. Let me be fair. Okay. We botched a spot in the middle of the match. There's a debate as to who made the mistake, but we'll leave it at that. It was 20 some odd years ago. I'm not gonna breathe heavy over it today. But but the match was fun and the crowd was into it, even with the botched spot, because they were into the characters and they were into the story that we were telling. And the story that we were telling was Eddie got tired of losing all the time, and he was going to kick my butt. And me, I'm just like, hey, look, what are you doing? And somehow out of that, I ended up being the babyface.
Oh wow. So are you willing to talk about some of the injuries that you sustained while wrestling?
Yeah, I can I really didn't sustain much. I mean, there was one match. I'm trying to think of what match it was. When Eddie and I were still doing the thing and I was the manager, we had a couple of matches where we did this spot. This was literally the finish to 2 or 3 of our matches. We did this thing where our opponent has him down. They do a move on him or something or another. I jump up on the side of the ring. I go to I'm John at the referee. I'm doing this thing. So now I've got to get in the ring and save my guy. So I go to get in the ring and I trip over the ring ropes and headbutt my guy in the crotch, hit him in the balls, and that goes to that. The other wrestler grabs me and throws me out of the ring. So if you've ever seen anybody go over the top rope, if you're doing it right, you're going to go flying over the top rope. And there was one time where I landed wrong and I rolled my ankle on the right side. Oh. And that one hurt for a few weeks afterwards. If you've ever rolled an ankle, it doesn't just heal overnight. No. And then there was one time in training, this guy Dave, rest in peace, Dave. He put me in a Boston Crab. And mind you, at the time I was 100 and maybe 40 pounds and Dave was 2 of me. Like, Dave was just hovering under 300 pounds, and he put me in a Boston Crab, and he leaned all the way back. To this day, I don't think my lower back is right because of it. And I say that, half joking, but half serious. Like, I have lower back problems, and I still believe that was a result of that.
Oh, that sucks.
But beyond that, I really didn't hurt myself.
That's amazing. Like, I know what it's like to roll my ankle, and it still hasn't, every now and then I still feel it. And it wasn't doing anything like what you do. I wasn't watching where I was walking at, and I stepped into a pothole.
Uh-oh, ouch.
So yeah, gotta love Winnipeg and our bad roads. But yeah, no, like, every so often I'll be walking and it'll be just like, oh, okay.
I've got a knee that does that, and that's just from being damn near 50 years old.
Bad back, bad knees, bad ankles. Yeah, I'm a mess.
yeah, same here. I wake up every day. I'm like, okay, what hurts this morning? Yeah. And then you do the idiot thing, like, okay, what did I do to hurt that, and when did I do it?
No, it's funny because I sprained my back several years ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how I did that. And it's like, well, that's what happens when you're getting into gaming and you spend like 4 hours tops a night gaming on your computer or your PlayStation. And yeah, so sitting on a wooden chair just is not fun. So I got this other chair. My husband loves to use it for his gaming.
Yeah. Yeah, at some point, I mean, I've got a pretty comfortable couch for my gaming. I'm not a big gamer. Like I was just talking with Tina earlier today. I was like, I couldn't tell you the last time I actually sat down and gamed for anything more than like an hour. I can't find the free time, and it's between the other people trying to use the TV. There's just
that's kind of how it is right now with me. Like since getting into podcasting, I haven't picked up a game controller in over a year.
Oh, wow.
So every now and then I'll see my husband playing Grand Theft Auto. I'm like, do you want me to download it and join you? And he's, oh, no, that's okay. But speaking of podcasting, you have your own show.
I do. It's me and two other guys primarily. This guy Rob and then this guy Jason. It's called the Mindless Musings podcast. We recently rebranded it into the Mindless Wrestling podcast. We just because when I originally came up with the podcast idea, I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I knew I was going to talk some wrestling stuff, but I wanted it to be more like, if you remember my old YouTube channel, it was pretty much just whatever the topic of the day was. I would come out there once or twice a week. And then what ended up happening was with YouTube, it was a little easier because they kept you grounded, at least in most circumstances, to a less than 10-minute vlog. And I can fill, 0 to 10 minutes worth of my own talking. With the podcasting stuff, I was reaching a point where I was like, okay, I've been talking for about 11, 12 minutes now, and I'm out of stuff to say. Like, where do I go beyond that? And when I started thinking about, maybe I ought to start having some co-hosts up here, maybe doing some interviews. So this guy, Rob, who I'd met through Twitter, who runs his own podcast called the Rob the Genius podcast, he and I started talking wrestling, and that's how we bonded, was over talking wrestling. I had him on a couple of times, and we clicked instantly. Like, we had really good chemistry early on. So it turned into a weekly thing. Rob and I got together and, we would record and, I'd go from there. And then there was another guy, we're in like a wrestling related Discord chat. And there was another guy in there, Jason, who had, kind of expressed interest in maybe giving it a try. So I was like, okay, come on up one night and we'll give it a try. We'll see how you do. And he ended up, just flowing really well into the river with us. And so it ended up being a 3-man tag team. And we've been doing this now as a 3-man thing for since probably January, I think. And so we really talked about it, and probably 99% of the content is wrestling. I think at one point, Rob and I did 2 episodes where we were talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. We did a preview before it ever came out, just kind of talking about the timeline of events that led to it. Yeah. And then after it came out, we went back and reviewed the movie. But beyond that, everything's been wrestling related. And I thought about it. I was like, okay, I just need to go full in on this and make it a wrestling related podcast. And, the beauty of the platform that I'm on, I could just create another podcast. And if I want to talk about just, whatever's going on in movies or any of my other areas of interest, I can do that another time.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, there's so many movie podcasts out there, so many pop culture podcasts. I mean, like, I make my living doing pop culture. But, just because now it just seems ever since the pandemic started, everybody started up a podcast.
Yeah. And pro wrestling podcasts are a dime a dozen. Like, they really are. And I knew that going in. Like, we don't reach a very broad audience. Some of it is because I don't know how to do like the RSS feeds and all that other stuff to really shoot it out into the universe the way it should be. I rely on the platform that I use is called anchor.fm. But they'll upload, they work with Spotify. I think it's actually owned by Spotify. So once I upload to Anchor FM, within like the hour, that podcast is available on Spotify. And those are really the two biggest platforms that I reach. You can get on Apple Podcast. There's a Google Podcast, and there's a few others. I'm still in the learning process of how to get those RSS feeds out there so that we can reach a broader audience. But I went in with no misconceptions. I knew that, wrestling podcasts are a dime a dozen, and everybody's within reason doing the same thing. And at that point, it's more do they get into you as a content creator versus the content that you're creating? And one thing that we try to do to separate ourselves from everybody else, there's a lot of guys doing what I call performance breathing. They get out there and they just scream into the void, and half the time they don't even believe what they're talking about. They're portraying a gimmick and a personality on their show. And I made it very clear with Jason and Rob that I want ours to be more grounded in reality. I want it to be like if we were three guys sitting at a bar talking wrestling, this is the type of discussion that we would have. And, we're definitely not a news podcast. We don't have the inside track. We do talk current events, and we will talk rumors and news and things like that as these things trickle out through more traditional media sites. Yeah. But we are not I don't have an inside track to WWE or AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor. I just don't have that. And we've never portrayed that. So we really don't reach as broad of an audience as I'd like to, but I'm still in the process of trying to expand that.
See, and I like listening to your show because of the fact that you bring a whole different perspective than, say me, who is just a fan of wrestling. Right. Like you know the business, you know the moves and how dangerous it is.
And I think that's, again, I don't like to brag because I don't want to come off like this grizzled old wrestling veteran. But, one, I've been watching the shit for the better part of 40 years, and I did it for, a little over 2 years. So I do have that perspective of the business from the inside. And there are a lot of people who are making, and this is where it gets a little frustrating. There are people who are making a genuine living at the podcasting and the internet radio shows and things like that, who have never stepped foot in a wrestling ring. And they're out here and they're talking about this medium like they know it simply because, okay, maybe I met some wrestlers at an indie show, and they were cool to me, so now I know the business. I know how it works on the inside. And you just can't. Yeah. Like you can't know what goes on until and it's like anything else, filmmaking, recording an album, if you're a musician, things like that. You can be a fan of it and they'll peel back the curtain only so far, but until you've actually been in there and done it and understand it from that perspective, you really can't know everything that's going on. And that's very frustrating sometimes when I do think about what, myself and Rob and Jason do on our show, that I feel like we should be hitting a larger audience than we are. I just don't know how to tap into that pulse yet.
Well, I'm going to try to help you out.
Well, I appreciate that. Any little bump that we can get will definitely help, because I think I adore the hell out of Rob and Jason. I think they both bring not only great personalities to the show, but Rob, again, is my age. He's been watching it as long as I have. Our trajectories in pro wrestling fandom, aside from the fact that I actually did it, are almost identical. And when you talk to him, and maybe that doesn't create great content because there's no real conflict. Like, we almost agree on everything, on our opinions, on our thoughts. And it's almost scary. And same thing to a lesser degree, Jason. Jason's a little bit younger, so he doesn't have that. He doesn't quite have that get off my lawn mentality, but he's getting there. So we're slowly grooming him to get to that point.
The funny thing is, I think I was there just as I turned 30. It's just like, now I have like a better understanding of life.
Right. And you don't get that understanding until you hit your 30s. And then you really, and even what you learned in your 30s and what you thought you knew in your 30s, when you get into your 40s, you're like, man, I was a dumbass back then. I was an idiot,
I'm getting to the point where it's like I have no time to deal with stupid people.
Right. And in the internet wrestling community, there are a lot of stupid people, and it's oh God. It's the internet wrestling community can be a cesspool at times. It can be a lot of fun. I've met some great people. I've met some wonderful people, but there's definitely some people out there that just make it intolerable.
I watch wrestling for the sheer entertainment about
as you should,
and being a fan of wrestling since I was a kid, I I know that there's some things that you can't take serious, and then some things that, you know, the actual moves of it that I'm like, what you guys did in the ring, or like what you guys do in the ring, it fascinates me, because it's like watching, you know, the circus, you know, watching the acrobats go.
Very
and
much so.
I'm just like, how the heck do you guys do that?
It is years of training and practice and learning to do it convincingly but safely.
Yeah. And I mean, like, in some cases, especially when it comes to the indie wrestling, yeah, you can kind of see see people like doing the count. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then lift, and then
Right.
I can kind of see you guys communicating back and forth with each other, but that's what I like seeing, is, you know, how you guys work together with each other on your moves.
It's interesting. I was watching WWE had their Crown Jewel pay-per-view the other night, and my girlfriend, she doesn't really watch, like, she watches casually with me, but the more and more, like, let's see, that show was Thursday night, and I had some things that I was planning on watching, because they were in Saudi Arabia, so their start time was 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, which was probably like 8 o'clock their time over there. There's like an 18-hour time difference or something like that. So it started at noon. I was at work. My plan was to come home in the evening, eat dinner, and then sit down and watch the show. Well, some things came up. I had to take my kid to the urgent care. She hurt her hand, so I didn't get home until well after 7. So I ended up watching about half of it Thursday night, and the other half after I got home on Friday. And she watched, I'd say, the large portion of it with me, which she never does. She'll come out and peek in, like, she likes certain wrestlers, and she'll come out and watch them for a minute, and then she'll go on and do her thing. This is the most she's actually sat there and watched. I'm listening to her talk, and she's asking me just a bazillion questions about all of it. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at her, and I'm like, you're absolutely the person who should be watching this, because you're so engrossed in what you're supposed to be engrossed in. You're not trying to figure out, okay, how did they do that move? How are they doing this? She's just watching it to watch it. Yeah. And I found that so fun. And she looked at me probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I watch it differently. I watch it as a fan, but I also watch it as somebody who used to do it. So I am critiquing little things, and I do find myself over analyzing it. So we're watching a match, and she knows that I'm really into one of the wrestlers that's in this match, but I'm not, going completely bananas about it. And she looks at me, she's like, do you ever root for anybody? And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I really don't. Like, I can see two guys in the ring, and one guy's a heel and one guy's a baby face. And I'm like, I'm supposed to root for the baby face, but I like the heel too. But more importantly, I'm watching how these guys dance in the ring, or girls, it's because I'm a huge, I don't want to just say these guys. I'm using guys as a general term, but, just watching how these two people, gel in the ring, and do they have good chemistry? Are they giving me a believable match? These are the things that this is the lens that I watch it through now. And that's a little depressing sometimes, because sometimes I just want to strip away what I think I know and what I actually do know, and just watch it as a fan, and, boo Roman Reigns and cheer this one and do all the stuff you're supposed to do as a fan. But I just, one, watching it so long, and two, actually doing it, it's changed my perspective on it. So I like watching it now through her eyes. Yeah. And through my daughter's eyes, because my daughter will sit and watch it sometimes with me, and I get a kick more. Some of my entertainment value now is watching them watch it versus me watching it. Yeah.
And well, when you met your girlfriend, was she a fan of wrestling then, or
not at all?
Something that
not at all. They grew up in a, like, she was familiar with some of the wrestlers back in the 80s, the Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, and Ric Flair and guys like that. She was familiar mostly because a lot of those guys were household names, and they crossed over into pop culture, and she's very into pop culture. So you had that crossover notoriety that she recognized. But as a fan of the medium, no, she was like, she grew up in the household of it's fake, you don't watch that. And so she never really, and even early on, she would kind of watch it, and she'd see something, and she'd kind of like give me the look. I'm like, look, don't watch it for that. Strip away all of that, because we all know the bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, when she and I met, I was like going on 40 years old. I'm like, look, as a 40-year-old man, no, I don't sit here and still look at this like I think it's real. Okay. I know what it is. I was part of what it is. I watch it for different reasons now. Strip away what you think you know and watch it for those reasons, and you'll enjoy it. And, here we are 8 years later, and I think that she's finally coming around on that. She's getting into the characters. She's getting into the reasons behind the feuds, and why is this guy trying to kick this guy's ass, and why is this girl after this girl, and and those little things are starting to come together for her, and she's finding it, at least to a certain degree, entertaining.
Yeah. And have you collected any of the memorabilia from the wrestlers?
I have one thing aside from some T-shirts. We have, and funny thing enough, she has like 4 or 5 T-shirts herself now because she's got a couple wrestlers that she likes, so she's bought a couple of T-shirts. But I have one thing. Hold that thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have my NXT replica title. This is probably the most expensive memorabilia of anything that I've bought. And this is, man. I mean, it's I forget what the strap material is, but it's a pretty solid, it's a well-made little replica belt here.
That is beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I love this thing. It's heavy as hell too. But yeah, that's probably the one piece of wrestling memorabilia that I own. I don't spend a lot of my money goes into costuming and stuff like that, and so I don't spend a whole lot on wrestling. And I'm cheap, so I typically wait for the sales. But other than some T-shirts, I don't really own a whole lot of wrestling memorabilia.
Yeah. Were you, did you collect the little figurines as well?
As a kid, I did. As a kid, I had a whole army of little wrestling figurines, and I actually had a little miniature wrestling ring, and I had posters on the wall and tapestries and all this other stuff. Like as a kid, all that stuff I had, but as an adult, my collectible stuff has dwindled greatly over the year. Everything I have, I can fit on one little shelf on a bookshelf.
So what kind of movies do you like watching? What's your favorite genre?
Probably realistically between superhero and sci-fi. Those are my movie genres.
And how are you liking the superhero films now?
I have yet to see one in the last 10 years from Marvel or DC that's disappointed me. I have, and that includes a couple of surprises. I know DC takes a hit. The fandom for DC movies, the people that actually enjoy it is very shallow. There's not a whole lot of people that enjoy it. I don't think DC, and quite frankly, I don't think Zack Snyder has missed. And I know he's not a part of that anymore. Mm-hmm. But I think his first several films didn't miss for me personally. I thought his version of Justice League was an absolute triumph of a film. Marvel, again, I can't say they've really hit. There's been some that I've loved less than others, but there were a couple of surprises. What was it? Shazam. Yeah. I had this much zero interest in seeing Shazam. That was the one DC movie. I'm like, this looks like crap. I don't mind. What's his name? Zachary Levi.
Yeah,
he was okay. I didn't dislike Chuck, but I didn't watch enough of it to really fall in love with him the way a lot of people in pop culture did.
It was a great show. I was a huge fan of it when it came out, and then I think I kind of tapered off after the 3rd or 4th season. So. It was
a love letter. I probably should start going back and watching it because the episodes that I saw, it was absolutely a love letter to nerd culture. It really was. And I don't know how deep into the woods you got with it. There was one episode where I think it was Chuck. They were at an arcade and his buddy was playing some arcade game and he was going for the top score or something like that. And do you remember the old animated Transformers movie from the 80s? Mm-hmm. Do you remember the soundtrack? They had that song, The Touch.
Yes.
That song starts playing in the background while he's playing this video game. It was absolutely a nerdgasm moment. I hear it. I hear it start. I'm like, no way. I'm like, son of a bitch, it's that song. And so it really was a love letter to nerd culture. And I probably should pick it up because I probably would love it more than I thought I would. But I really, again, I don't have that affinity and that love for Zachary Levi as an actor. So when I heard he was being cast as Shazam, I'm like, pass on this one. And then I saw the first trailer and I'm like, this doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I showed Tina, I'm like, what do you think of this trailer? Is this something that you think you want to go see? And she's like, yeah, this actually looks like a hell of a lot of fun. I loved Shazam. I truly, and it was a pleasant surprise
really
of a film.
Movie. I loved
it. Was fun. And that was exactly it. And I was and I love little surprises like that, like something that I think I'm going to hate, and I ended up loving. And Shazam was on that list.
Aquaman was also a really fun movie. I really liked it.
Oh yeah, I had no doubts Aquaman was going to be fun, and of course it's Jason Momoa, so I didn't have to twist her arm too hard to get her to the theater.
One of my favorite movies, though, it's not so much. It's not a superhero film, but Ready Player One was just like I have to geek out over that because
I love that movie. I just watched it again here about a month or two ago. Have you read the book? Because I haven't read the book.
I haven't yet, but the movie, it's just whenever it's on, my husband's the same way. We'll play it every time it's on TV because it's just one of those, like, it's a fan film.
It's very much a love letter to fans like ours.
But in the theater, me and my husband were like pointing out all these little things. Christine's in there, like in the race, and we're just like, and we're really we're getting to the point where we're really loud, and people beside us were telling us to shut up. And it's like, no, this is our film.
They made this movie strictly for us. I know it.
But yeah, it's definitely a movie that I wish I would have had a chance to see it again in the theaters when it was out, but just
I don't think we saw that. I'm trying to remember if we saw that in the theater or we went ahead and just bought the Blu-ray. I think that was one where we took somebody at their word because we didn't get to the theater to see it. Somebody said, hey, I think you'll like it. Because a lot of times we won't buy a Blu-ray unless we've seen it in the theater. But this was one we took a chance on, and we went ahead and bought it. And I'm pretty sure we bought it. I think we did. I don't know. We've got so many movies I can't even keep track of what we have anymore. I was like, it's like going into Blockbuster back in the day. Like find some random gem laying on my DVD and Blu-ray case. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we had this. Let me watch this. I haven't seen it in 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I remember getting like some of the movies from Kevin Smith, and I remember like putting some of the movies away, and I still had what was it? Dogma still sealed in his package.
Oh wow. Dogma was his crowning achievement. I really thought Dogma, like I thought as a story, I thought Chasing Amy was a little bit better, but as an overall movie, I thought Dogma just delivered the best that Kevin Smith has ever done.
And it's a great film and has so many great actors in it too.
Yeah.
I didn't expect at the time for like all these actors to be as big as they are now.
Yeah, it really was. You had Alan Rickman was in it. It's been probably 10 years or more since I've seen Dogma, but yeah, just it was an incredibly cast film, and just to me the theme behind it was really, it spoke to me at the time.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, I love Clerks. Like, I'm a huge fan of Clerks and Clerks 2. I'm a fan of pretty much all his films, but I don't know, something about Dogma just has that. It wasn't your typical. It is a typical Kevin Smith film, but it wasn't.
It kind of went outside the box a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd say probably my second favorite film of his is probably Clerks 2. Again, because that was such a love letter to nerds. It really was a love letter.
Like I love his little speeches that he has in there, where like every character has like their little monologues, and Randall, like as much as I am very much a Dante, Randall every now and then it comes out in me, and it's like, well, this job would be great if it weren't for all the customers.
I think we've all had that moment. Like, my job would be awesome if I never had to see anybody.
But yeah, no, like it's really funny how you can relate to certain characters in films, and and with Clerks, it's easy to be relatable. Those characters are easy to be relatable.
And Kevin Smith was brilliant with that. Like he really is brilliant with making characters that, again, I could be that guy. You could be that girl. Like or you grew up with that person. You worked with that person. You know them, and that's such a good nuance to be able to do that and make those types of films.
Yeah,
it's like this generation's John Hughes.
Absolutely. And I know like it seems like every director has their actors that they like working with. Yeah. And I feel bad for Rob Zombie getting as much hate as he is over casting his wife and everything. Yeah. But you know what? In the new Monster movies, you know, as much as I'm a fan of the Monsters, I'm willing to see what it's going to be like.
Is there a trailer out for that? I knew he was making one, and I'd seen like some early photos.
Yeah, I don't think there's a trailer yet out. I think they just finished filming.
Okay.
But yeah, they've been releasing photos, and people are just like, "Oh, they casted his wife," and I'm just like, you know what? If Tim Burton would have made the movie, we would have saw probably Helena Bonham Carter as Lily.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's I have no problem with Rob Zombie casting his wife, because half the time she's either like she's never the main character. Like she's always an extra or a side character or something like that. So people breathe heavy over the dumbest things.
But and then of course, like with all this hate comes like the absolute love afterwards, and it's like, what made you change your mind all of a sudden?
Well, but probably because the movie will end up being pretty good.
Yeah,
kind of like when everybody laughed when he remade Halloween, and then his remake of Halloween ended up apparently being pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I see. I'm not a huge fan of Rob Zombie stuff, but I'll watch it.
Yeah, I liked his music, and I'm not a big horror movie fan. Like Tina's the slasher flick fan. Like she'll watch horror movies and slasher flicks, and she gets frustrated with me because it's not my thing. Like a good psychological horror gives me anxiety. It gives me anxiety. Like I have to watch it at high noon with all the lights on, just because if I watch it at night, I won't freaking sleep because I've got like a brain that doesn't stop anyway. And then these movies get just dug in there. And so that's not entertaining to me. But she'll watch them and she'll laugh and she'll cut up and she just thinks it's hilarious. I did give, what was the first? Was it House of 1,000 Corpses? Was that his first feature-length film?
I believe so, yes.
I believe it was. I watched it, and it was for what it was a good low-budget splatter film. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch the follow-up, which I think was The Devil's Rejects. She started to watch it, and she's like, I couldn't get through the first scene because apparently there was some imagery in the first scene that was just a little bit more than she could handle. And I think that's just kind of one of those things where I think he probably goes a little too far on certain things. Like I love Rob Zombie's music. I've been a Rob Zombie music fan for decades. Yeah. But I think sometimes with these, for lack of a better word, these torture porn films, some people just can only handle so much. And I'm one of them. Like I think there is a bridge too far in some of these things. And so that's why I tend to just not watch them, because it's like they're probably fine films and they're probably perfectly entertaining for the people that are into them. But rather than sit here and complain about them, I just don't watch them.
And for me, I'm a huge zombie fan. Like,
right.
It can be just like the dumbest zombie film, and I'm just like, hey, that's cool, just to see what happens. Although, like, I tried watching like things like Z Nation, and I'm just like, I can't. Even though like there's so many good actors in it, I'm just like, I can't sit here and watch that.
I'm hit or miss with zombie things. Like when The Walking Dead first came out, I was like, oh, it's a zombie show. I have no interest because I'm not a big zombie person. When 28 Days Later came out, I heard everybody, oh my God, you got to see 28 Days Later. It's amazing. It's just wonderful. So I watched it. And they had me roped in the first 10 minutes. This guy wakes up. He's all alone. There's no one around. I'm like, okay, that in and of itself is horrifying. Like you wake up and there's no one here and you can't find. He goes probably the first 20, 25 minutes of the film, there's nobody but him. Yeah. So that as a theme is horrifying enough. And then all of a sudden I'm watching, and then my next thought was they turned it into an effing zombie film. Like the first 30 minutes to me was brilliant. I'm like, you've got me. Like you've got me reeled in. And then it was a zombie film. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll see this one through to the end, but I'm not feeling the love like so many people do. And I went in with the same mentality with The Walking Dead. I was like, okay, I have zero interest in watching another zombie show. Where The Walking Dead got me was in the characters. And I was still living in New York, and I think season 2 or 3, trying to remember what the time frame was and when The Walking Dead came out. Season 2 or 3 was getting ready to premiere, and one of the local channels did like a Walking Dead marathon. So I binged watched like the whole first season just because, okay, let me see what the hype is about. And by the 3rd episode, I was like, this is a show for me. Like, this is the show. And I did. I binge watched at least, as I'm trying to remember, at least the first season, if not the first 2. And then I just went right into the 3rd season. And I kept it up for a few. And then when Tina and I got together, she's not a big fan of it. So I kind of fell off around season 4 or something like that and just haven't gone back.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I kind of tapered off too, because I became a fan of it. I watched the first season and it was a little bit slow for me, but at the same time, it's just like, there's more to this. I'm going to continue watching. I absolutely loved certain characters, but it's like, don't pick a favorite character because they always end up dying.
Yeah, it's one of those shows. Don't latch yourself emotionally to anyone on that show.
But as soon as Negan showed up, I just found him to be just a terrible villain. I'm just like, no, hey. I'm all for characters making speeches and long monologues, but it just with Negan, just kill him off already.
Yeah. I don't know how long he lasted in the books. As like I said, in watching the show, I started to pick up some of the graphic novels just to see how the show flowed with the books, and it's fairly consistent in the first couple of seasons. There's some, definitely some things that they ripped right out of the pages, and then some things that they had to take liberties with because you've got to fill in the blanks from page 1 to page 2. And there's always some blanks. So I get that, as a with screenwriting and things like that. But it's I only picked up, I think, first 3 or 4 graphic novels, and that was well before Negan was ever introduced as a character. I think the last I may have the book where they introduced Michonne.
Okay.
But I think that may be where I left off.
Yeah. Well, I kind of stopped watching altogether after Andrew Lincoln left because it's just like, well, what's the point? The main character's gone.
Right.
But yeah, as soon as they killed off his son and they killed off a bunch of other characters, it's just like, done.
Yeah, that's shows like that. It amazes me. They're on season 11 now or something like that. Mm-hmm. It amazes me that a show like that has that kind of longevity because aside from the writer's strike, which really, really hurt Lost, if you remember the show Lost, that again was another one of those shows. Don't get too emotionally invested in those characters because they could be gone in an instant. And while I think that from a writing standpoint, that really sounds good because there is a sense of urgency. There is a sense of, hey, there is no star. Anybody could be gone at any moment. When people watch TV shows, I think they watch looking for, at least I know me personally, like I'll watch a mediocre to bad TV show if I'm into a character and a character's journey. And there's been a lot of shows that I've watched and I've been disappointed because they've canceled them after season 1. I'm like, I'm into this character. I want to see how their story ends, and it's gone. And so for me, I had a hard time following Lost after a certain period because they started to kill off some characters that I'm like, okay, that was the end of their story. Like they still have work to finish in life and they're gone. And it's the same thing with The Walking Dead. Like I feel like some of the character The characters were done before their stories were, and that's, to me, that's a hard that's a hard ball to juggle for a TV show.
Here's my pet peeve about The Walking Dead. Okay, they brought back the actress Brett Butler, and they had her in for that one season, and then they killed her character off, and I like cried because I'm just like, you can't do this to me. Bring back one of the actresses from my childhood.
Yeah. God, Brett Butler's a name I haven't heard in a minute.
I know. Grace Under Fire was one of my favorite shows back in the 90s, and to see her back on TV was just incredible. And she was a fairly strong character, and I'm just like, okay, that's it.
Yeah, you're checked out at that point. That's crazy.
I was so angry at that.
Yeah, there was 2 TV shows my ex-wife and I got involved in. And they were actually very similar shows. There was a show called Surface, and then there was another one called Invasion. And Invasion kind of and it had William Fichtner in it. And I think Invasion actually made it 2 seasons, but Surface ended like on a cliffhanger. The first season ended on a cliffhanger. We're like, okay, we got to know what happens. And then they canceled it. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah. But yeah, and there's been several shows, and Fox is really bad for that. Netflix is really bad for that too.
Yeah, now. Netflix is notorious.
Where it's like you'll get into a show and then they're like, oh, we're only doing like 1 or 2 seasons. It's like, then why even bother introducing it to us?
There's one on Netflix. I don't know if you saw it. It's had Hilary Swank. It was like a Mission to Mars type of. That basically they're on a mission to try and colonize Mars, and the acting in it was superb. The special effects for being a Netflix series, it was cinematic. I mean, it really was like they pulled this off a movie, and it went 1 season. Like the season ended with them landing on Mars, and that was it. I'm like, what the hell? I got to know what happens next. And it's at least, I think this series aired in 2020. And the last I heard that they were not planning on doing a second season, which stinks because it was a really good show. And I think it started off strong. It does get a little slow in the middle. Like it's really like a tale. It's like a 3-act show throughout the whole season. Like the first couple episodes get you really hooked. There's a lot of conflict with the characters, a lot of conflict around her going on what's essentially going to be probably a 2 to 3 year trip to and from Mars. She's leaving her family behind. There's a lot of conflict there. Her husband has some health problems. There's just a lot going on. And then in the middle, it kind of drags a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there's some tropey stuff, like just her crew starting to doubt her because she's the commander of the mission. So her crew starting to doubt her ability, and there's a little bit of trope in there that you got to kind of work through. But then by the end, you find yourself getting more invested in the mission and the characters in the mission, and then it's over, and you're like, that was it. Like, I'm not getting any more of that.
I know, and they did that with the Santa Clarita Diet as well. And I mean, I know Drew Barrymore. I really wish Drew Barrymore would have gotten the rights from that for that show, because it would have been nice for her to continue it outside of Netflix. But I don't know what the deal was for that. But I know even the main actor that was in it. Like, for the life, my brain isn't working. I apologize, but
no, it's okay.
He even said, regardless of what's happening, I'm going into work tomorrow.
I think they did the same thing with the OA. I don't know if you watched any of the OA. I started to watch it. There's a funny story about that, but I started to watch it. It looks pretty interesting. But yeah, I think they canceled that after season 2 or 3. Yeah. And again, very intriguing show, but I tuned into that one. I'm like, okay, this looks interesting. Let me see what's going on here. So I start watching the first episode, and I didn't pay attention to the show rating. So I'm like, okay, Netflix show. Blam, doing the thing, and this girl, she's talking with her mom, and they're having this meaningful moment. So my daughter walks in. My daughter's 15 at the time, and she's kind of standing over my shoulder watching the show, and this girl's having this talk with her mom, blah, 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 blah. They go to the next scene, and it's full frontal nudity sex with my 15-year-old kid standing in the room watching. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh, this is awkward.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, pause, get out of the room. Send her ass to her bedroom. I'm like, I guess I'll pick this up another time when my kid's not in the house. No clue what I was getting into with this show. I should have thought about it. I should have saw the TV rating at the beginning of it, but I didn't pay attention to that.
Well, see that's just it. Like my husband and I love watching. Like I'll get my husband into different shows here and there. He got me into watching Spartacus.
Okay.
And so I started watching that with him, and of course, it's like one of the first scenes that I walked in was like the orgy, one of their orgy scenes. I'm just like, okay. What is this?
So that's what we're getting into with this.
But it's like, okay, so but the storyline, like we watched it all, and so every so often we'll watch it together again. And even with Game of Thrones, he got into Game of Thrones, and I think it was like the 4th season that I finally sat down and watched it with him fully.
Yeah. Yeah. Game of Thrones is one we got into together. I started watching it because I think it started when I was still living in New York, and I watched the first season when I was in New York. Then I moved back to Florida, didn't have HBO, so I didn't think about it. And then probably about 4 years ago, we started to buy the Blu-ray box sets of each season, and we got completely roped into it. And she thought some of the sex in it was a bit gratuitous, and in certain circumstances it could be. I wasn't bothered so much by it, but I understood why watching it can put some people off, regardless of what you think of your own sex life. Sometimes watching it on TV is different than doing it yourself. Yeah. So there was definitely some of that, but we bought all was it 7? I think they went 7 seasons. I think we bought all 7 seasons on Blu-ray, and it's still one of our favorite TV shows, and we're looking forward to the spinoff series.
Yeah. And have you read any of the books?
I have not. She has, and she told me that I think season 2 or season 3 starts to kind of diverge from the books a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it didn't stop her from enjoying the series as a standalone type of thing. But yeah, she's a little hard sell on these types of things, and she's very much by the book. Like we're going to see Dune probably tonight. We're going to watch it on HBO Max, and that's her absolute favorite sci-fi book is Dune. Yeah. So, and she liked the movie back from the 80s with Kyle MacLachlan. She loves it. She liked the Dune remake, and then the Children of Dune that was on Sci-Fi Channel about a dozen years ago. She enjoyed that. So she's looking forward to it. But I just hope this doesn't turn into it. That wasn't how the book went. And that wasn't in this person wasn't in stop. Just watch it. Just watch the movie.
See, okay, that I think that's kind of where being an X-Men fan kind of ruined me for the movies, is because I kind of was watching it because I'm a huge X-Men fan, and then once it started to go away from what the characters were and all that, I'm just like, started throwing popcorn at the screen. And
I have a friend that's like that. He'll watch something and he's such a purist, like that. He's like, that wasn't. I'm like, dude, just relax, breathe, okay? I mean, we can sit here and we can pick apart. Like, I think most people will agree that Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Wolverine was spectacular, like as spot on as anybody could have been. Never mind the fact that he's 1.5 feet taller than the character actually is in the books. If we can look past that.
Well, okay, that's just it. Like, we're not gonna get We're not gonna get people that are perfect for each character,
right?
But I stand by Ben Affleck as Daredevil.
You know what? I just watched Daredevil again here about 2 weeks ago, and I 100% agree with you. He was not if there are any complaints I could make about the Daredevil movie, Ben Affleck as Daredevil was not one of them. And I'd say the same thing about Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. I thought he was a fine Hal Jordan. I could pick the movie apart and lay out, for a mile all the problems that there were with the film, and none of that would be, Ryan Reynolds' portrayal of Hal Jordan. I thought he was fine. I thought Ben Affleck was now I did enjoy Charlie Cox a little better as Daredevil, but I also think some of that was because of what was wrapped around him. They wrapped Charlie Cox in a very, very nice package.
Yeah.
Like if you watch the Daredevil TV show, it was very well put together. Ben Affleck was a good Daredevil in a mediocre movie.
Yeah.
And I think people fail to make that connection.
But I mean, like when they released the director's cut, it made totally more sense. And
yes,
I'm just
the director's cut is a much. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. They cut it up so bad for the theatrical version that of course it kind of sucked because it made no sense.
Right.
In some scenes.
Well, and that's sometimes with these genre type films, you need to trust the director. And the same thing can be said about Zack Snyder. If you go back and look at every single director's cut of most of Zack Snyder's genre films, we'll just take Sucker Punch. Yeah. Sucker Punch as a theatrical movie was good. Sucker Punch, the director's cut, hits on a whole different level. Like it really does. It gets deeper. It gets more emotional. It gets more visceral. And the same thing can be said about not only Zack Snyder's Justice League, but Batman versus Superman, the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah.
Much, much more fleshed out characters, much more intriguing movie. There was just a lot more going on. And when you watch the theatrical cut, I can't even watch the theatrical cut anymore because you miss something. And I think with these genre films, if these studios hire these directors, let them do the work.
Yeah.
It's trust them. And I think if they had trusted Zack Snyder, DC would be on. And now I think they've course corrected a little bit. I've seen the trailer for the new Batman film, which I was not hyped for until I saw the first trailer. If Robert Pattinson walked off the planet tomorrow, I wouldn't miss him. But I am hyped for this new Batman film. I enjoyed the Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix. And for what little I've seen of what they're going to do with the Flash film,
yeah,
I'm excited. So I think DC is finally getting it going in a direction that I think is going to make them the money they want to make. But I still think if they had left Zack Snyder alone, let him do his work the way he wanted to, we would have gotten something brilliant from him because we got something fairly brilliant with Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah. And I love that film. Like the Justice League was a great film on its own, but the Zack Snyder version of it definitely I would have loved to see that version fully in the theater.
I didn't hate what Joss Whedon did. Like a lot of people, now that we've seen what Zack Snyder wanted to do, a lot of people are really, really dumping on the Joss Whedon version. And, Joss Whedon and all the controversy surrounding him aside, if that was the Justice League movie we had been given and that was the end of the story, like there was no Snyder cut, nothing else, I would have been okay with what we got. It was fine. It was really a fine bookend to that series of movies. And, that would have been it. But you can see just the glaring differences between what Zack Snyder had envisioned and what the studio wanted.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, his vision was better than what the studio wanted.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, Joss Whedon as a person obviously is a dumpster fire.
Problematic to put it politely. Yeah.
But what he did for fandom is you can't ignore the fact that, the characters he created.
Yes. He brought a lot of stuff
to
all
life. Fantastic. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love the movie and I love the TV show.
Yeah.
Although I think I love the movie a little bit more than the TV show.
See, I'm the other way around. I hated the damn movie.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it. I watched it through a different set of eyes because I saw it when it first came out. And I'm like, what is this crap? Like, what is this crap that I'm watching? And then I watched the TV show. I'm like, okay, this is better. It's better crap. Okay. Yeah. Because it's not taking itself seriously, but it's a serious show. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer was pretty heavy in some spots.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times when it was very campy and it was supposed to be, but when it got heavy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer hit you.
Yeah. But I mean, like as everything progressed with his creativity, to get something like in the middle of a writer's strike, you have NPH coming out and as Dr. Horrible and the sing along blog came out. And I'm just
right.
this is fun, you know.
Yeah, as we've said in the wrestling industry, you make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and that's what he did at a bad time in the industry. There was a lot of bad stuff going on, so he took what he had and he made something out of it. And you can't, you can think what you want about a person and then look at their creativity and say, okay, yeah, they were a complete douche of a human, but they made some pretty cool stuff, and Joss Whedon has made some pretty cool stuff over the years. Yeah. I see your Avengers poster in the background there. I took a giant steamer on Joss Whedon being announced as the director for the Avengers. Like, I was not on board with this.
Yeah.
Like, I was so disappointed when they made that announcement, because here we got a fantastic Iron Man movie. We got a great Thor movie and an awesome Captain America movie. And they were going to tie it all together, and they were going to make the Avengers, and then all this stuff was going to happen. And Joss Whedon's going to direct it. And I went, I'm out. Like, I had zero desire to see this until, again, the first trailers came out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a chance. And then I was like, okay, this ended up being pretty special. And kudos for that. But there was definitely a time when I was definitely checked out on the Avengers because Joss Whedon's name was attached to it.
See, and I think he made me a fan, more of a fan of the Avengers than I ever was.
Yeah.
And not to put down a lot of the writers who worked for Marvel at the time, but I mean, in the 90s, it wasn't so like the Avengers wasn't my comic book.
Yeah, no, and they really weren't mine either. Like, I liked Captain America, but like you, I was an X-Men fan.
Yeah.
Like, because the X-Men were misfits, and that was me. That was me, an awkward, misfit. And so that as a theme, the X-Men spoke to me. And I was definitely a Wolverine fan and a Colossus fan. And, those were the books that I read and that I liked. So I was excited for the Avengers, mainly because they were going to tie these movies together. I'm like, holy crap, we've got 3 separate movies and I'm going to put them all in one. That's me. And but yeah, no, like you, the Avengers was not my book growing up.
Yeah. And I know that with X-Men, like, Beast was my favorite character, Beast and Rogue. But and even to see the X-Men come to life, that was like my teen angst just like coming out. I'm just like, yes. I loved seeing Kelsey Grammer portray Beast. He
was spot on. Like,
and I would love to see him return, but
I liked him better than Nicholas Hoult, and Nicholas Hoult was fine. For playing a younger Beast, he was fine. He's a good actor, and it was fine. But I just thought, because when I think of Beast and what I thought I read in the comics, that animated series from the 90s that came out, that Beast was comics accurate, and Kelsey Grammer's Beast was that Beast. So for me, he was pretty authentic in that role.
Yeah. I mean, like, sure, it would be awesome to hear the voice of the voice actor who portrayed Beast and see him, don the makeup, and because he would portray Beast really well. But a lot of people would be going, well, he portrayed Sinbad's brother, but I'm just like, no, he's Beast to me.
That was like, did you watch any of the shows from the Arrowverse? Arrow, Flash.
I tried getting into all that. I just didn't have the time to really sit and watch it.
There's a lot, and you really have to, especially at certain points, you have to pay attention to all the shows, because once a year they did an annual crossover. And the last crossover they did before they ended Arrow was a Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was amazing. Like, the year before they did, what the hell did they do? They did a crossover, and there was again, it's an absolute love letter to fans. Like, there's even one scene where I just, as a fan, it was like a fangasm moment. There's a scene where something happens and Supergirl ends up outside of a window, outside of a building, and she looks and there's this guy in there, and she looks at him and is like, "General, would you care to step outside?" and it was ripped right out of Superman 2. And I was like, oh my God, she said the thing. That's awesome. So they really paid a lot of homage to that. But what they did in the latest crossover was they merged all the DC properties, like all that. Like they had, I forget that Burt Ward, because what they did, they had alternate universes.
Yeah.
They had, they basically played in the multiverse. So at one point, like this cataclysmic thing is happening, and you see Burt Ward walking down the street. And I'm like, that's Burt Ward. And then they went over, and if you remember from the Michael Keaton Batman movies, they had the reporter Knox. Well, they had that actor sitting there looking at the newspaper, and he's looking up in the sky, and he's like, I hope you're out there, big guy. So then they tied in Tim Burton's Batman. Well, then they went to, what the heck else did they do? There were a couple other things that they did. But at one point in the series, you had Grant Gustin's Flash come face to face with Ezra Miller's Flash. So they pulled the movies into the TV show. And it was just this whole huge, just nerd thing that was absolutely incredible that they did, and that they were able to pull it off. But the coolest part of the whole thing was Kevin Conroy finally got to play Bruce Wayne, because in one of the timelines, he's an old, bitter, busted up Bruce Wayne who killed Superman in that timeline.
Yeah.
And it's so good. Like, it really is good. And it's the sad thing of the whole thing is, because of the licensing rights from TV to movie, they can't release that 5-part series as one disc. You actually have to individually buy, because what they did was, like, episode 1 was on The Flash, and episode 2 was on Supergirl, and episode 3 was on Legends of Tomorrow, and then Arrow. And so, like, it spanned all 5 shows. So you actually have to go out and buy each individual season to find that episode and put it all together and watch it. So it's a little annoying because of the licensing, but if you can ever get a chance to, like, stream all 5 episodes back to back, it's such a cool thing. It really is.
I'll have to definitely look into that, because I was excited. I was excited when they announced that John Cryer was going to be Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that was the other thing that they did. John Cryer's Lex Luthor came face to face with Tom Welling's Clark Kent. That was the other thing that they did. That's just so cool on so many levels.
I would have loved to see him portray Lex Luthor in the films, but
yeah. I think he would have been really good. I didn't dislike Jesse Eisenberg, is that his name?
Yeah.
I didn't dislike the character that he played, and I've had people explain it in different ways and it made sense. I'm not sure that I consider what he played a comics accurate Lex Luthor. When I think comics accurate Lex Luthor, I think Michael Rosenbaum. Yeah. Like, what he did on Smallville, to me, was the single most authentic live action Lex Luthor we've ever gotten.
Mm-hmm. Now, and speaking of which, they're celebrating, 20 years for Smallville now?
Yeah, he's doing the Comic-Con rounds right now. I just saw a picture of him recently. He went face to face with someone. I can't even remember who it was, but yeah, it was. They're doing the rounds on that now.
One of my friends from the Hanging with Web thing, he's doing a celebration tonight for Smallville. So
that's cool.
Make sure you guys pay attention to that tonight.
Yes, tune in. Tune in. Plenty of content. Like, you guys do a ton of content with this.
Oh yeah, we're always like, if I'm not doing something, it's always the other guys who are.
The other guys. That's fun.
I'm busy with, like, not just doing Reels and Heels and my Willow's Pillow Talk, but I'm also with another group called Back of the Cereal Box, and they put out content like almost every day. Yeah,
if I would probably do more content if I had the free time. I love this podcasting and broadcasting thing, and you and I go back to the days of Blog TV and Stickum and things like that. But it's what I found is, because yours is the 3rd show. Well, this is technically twice with you, and this would be the 4th show that I've co-hosted on. It's almost more fun. Like, I love doing my own show, but there's a bit of pressure when you're the captain of your own ship to try and keep it, like, I've got three of us on my show, sometimes four. Sometimes I'll have a person rotate into the fourth chair. So you've got to kind of make sure everybody's getting equal talking time. And, because on my show, one of us will go off on like a monologue and take over the mic for like 5 or 10 minutes and just go, 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 go. So as the captain of the ship, so to speak, you've got to govern that, moderate it, and say, okay, let's take a break here. Let me go to, let me let Rob talk for a few minutes, or let me let Jason talk for both of you shut up so I can talk for a minute. So you run into that. When I'm on somebody else's show, I don't have to do any of that. I just got to talk. I answer questions and throw in where I can. So I definitely like co-hosting, probably just a little bit more than actually hosting.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't care about, keeping time. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I know, like, some people are like, well, an hour's all I can handle. And it's like, well, we'll see what happens in an hour.
Yeah. But with three guys talking on the Mindless Wrestling podcast, there's no way we could get it done in an hour. Like as it is, I'm having a hard time keeping it under 2 hours these days. And the only reason that I like to keep it, I try to do an hour and a half, mainly because we don't start until like 7:30, almost 8 o'clock. I get up at 5 a.m. By the time we get done, I wait for everything to save, get ready to edit and upload. It's 9:30 going on 10 o'clock. I'm like, I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. And half the time I do my show in my pajamas. Just because I told them that the other day. I'm like, look, you guys are sitting here in your wrestling shirts and your sports team shirts. Me, I'm here in pajamas, guys, because when we're done, I'm turning everything off. I'm going to bed. I'll edit it in the morning when I get up. So that's kind of the hard thing of starting at night. But with my work schedule and just what we have going on in the house right now, I have a very small window with which to do these things. I'm hoping that situation will improve in the next couple of months. Then I'll be more open to guest hosting on some people's shows, maybe opening my show up to a couple nights a week, or just starting a whole new podcast with some different people talking about some different stuff. Ideally, I'd like to, because I enjoy doing it. But just, right now it's a time constraint and a situational constraint for me.
And the great thing about these podcasts is the community that has arisen around it. Like everybody's so eager to share each other's work and help each other out. There's also Carl Witzman is in the chat. Sorry for not mentioning you sooner, but he's part of the Rising Tide broadcast network. And
hello, Carl.
So that's also a community that likes to make sure that everybody gets promoted as much as they can. And one of their hosts a show where that's his main goal, is to help promote you. Yeah.
And that's, that calls back to the old school days of YouTube, the YouTube community as the vlogging community, before the celebrity status of it all. I met you through YouTube. I met my friends and I still keep contact with probably 75% of the people that I met back in those old days. we're all friends. And even if we're casual friends just through social media, we still keep in touch one way or another. And and I've met those types of people doing the wrestling podcasting. There are people that are definitely part of their own broadcasting and podcasting network, but they'll listen to my show. They'll share my show. And I've been on a couple of their shows as well, not just talking wrestling, but promoting my own work as well. So that network is there. And I do agree that even if you're not part of a network, quote unquote, people are out there. Like I'm trying to get into the StreamYard thing, and I was on a show. Myself, Rob, and Jason were on a show. It was the AWI pod, and we did a watch along of SummerSlam '88 last week, which was a hell of a lot of fun. And he uses StreamYard, and I thought the show, and I know I had used it with you, and I know a few people that use StreamYard. So I'm slowly teaching myself how to use that and get everything integrated with that, because I think going forward, I would. Rob, Jason, and I would like to do some live broadcast stuff as well as the recorded stuff, just to try and reach a bigger market. And the great thing about StreamYard is how user-friendly everything is. Everything's like just a click of a button to set up. And there's still some features that I wish that they would bring in, but at the same time,
if you have a group of people using the same StreamYard, you guys can pool your money together and pay for your subscription and get all the big features that it. But even just the free thing, it has a lot of great features that you can use.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and the monthly subscription for the medium tier plan isn't too bad. That one I can definitely swing a month. I think the other one may be a little bit more than I can do right now, especially since I'm not getting any return on this podcasting investment right now. But if I ever reach a point where we are starting to get some return on the investment, then I would definitely, recycle that money back into the show. Just because I have a pretty decent paying day job. Like, I do not make rent on my wrestling podcast. And to be quite frank with you, I never want to have to make my rent on my wrestling podcast. I talk about it because it's fun. Yeah. I get to talk about it with my friends. We have a good time talking about something we enjoy. They both have good jobs. They're not looking to, feed their families with it. That's not why we're doing it. Obviously, if I made enough to make a little supplemental income, nobody's going to, turn their nose up at that. But at the same time, I don't live and breathe and die by my wrestling podcast. And I never want to have to. Yeah.
And I kind of am still a little weary about asking people to help, donate.
Same. I have it set up on, like I said, with the platform that I use, the anchor.fm, you have the option of setting up a donation, and I have it set up, but I don't ask. I think every now and then I'll casually, because we're in this imaginary war with a lot of wrestling journalists, and people will pay. Like, some of these wrestling journalists, they have it's like a $12.99 a month subscription just to go and listen to what they consider to be news or the scoops. And at the end of the day, it's bullshit anyway. Yeah. But I'm like, if you're going to spend $12.99 a month on that crap, come and drop me half of that into my anchor.fm so that I can, afford, new equipment or something like that. And that's about as close as I don't sit there and record entire segments of, hey, come to blah, 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 and, drop off a couple of bucks and tell your friends to do the same. I'm not going to do that. If people if they find me on Anchor and they want to click and they want to donate, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. But I don't use this to feed my family.
I heard of people using the money for their Amazon addiction. And I'm just like, you know what? Feel free to donate to me if you want, but yes, it would go into the show, but I'm not releasing, the amount of times that I've saved something on Amazon to buy later. Yeah. I'm not releasing that list because there's a lot of strange stuff on my Amazon list that, nobody needs to see. Hey, Brian.
Brian, hello. Yeah, it's one of those things that basically, like you said, I'm not doing this to make money at it. A little supplemental income would be nice. If I did make anything substantial, I'd cycle it back into the show, share it with the guys. And if I had any left over, I'd probably just throw it in the bank and leave it there. Because it's like I do this for fun. I do this because I enjoy it. And, I have a lot of fun talking with the guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, it's also a pride thing for me. And, I put myself through broadcasting school. I would not ever want, to make people feel guilty to donate to me.
Yeah. If they do, they do. If they don't, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because it's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you have planned for the rest of your day?
Rest of my day, let's see. I've got ribs marinating right now that I'm probably going to throw on the grill in the next probably 15, 20 minutes.
AEW Dynamite.
They are in Orlando. We were talking about that a little earlier at the beginning of the show. I'm probably going to marinate. I've got those ribs marinating. I'm going to get them on the grill. They'll take about 2 hours to cook. And then once we're done with dinner, we're going to settle down and watch Dune.
Awesome. So do you make your own sauces for your ribs?
No, it's a packet. It's a little marinade packet. I mixed with it's a applewood smoked thing, and I mix it with apple cider vinegar, a little bit of olive oil, and some water. Mix the packet up, and then it's almost like a wet dry rub. I put on the ribs, let them sit for a couple hours, and then I'll throw them on the grill.
Okay. Do you smoke your own meat?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you got into that?
Yeah.
I've been noticing that a lot with streamers now. It's they either do like coffee or smoked meat, and that seems like an interesting adventure to get into.
And some of it ends up being like almost like watching a tutorial, because people who want to learn different, especially foodies, like there's a bazillion foodies in the world, and I'm, being a foodie, I, like to find different ways of cooking things and different flavors and things like that. So you can watch these and say, okay, that's what that guy's doing. That's his technique, or that's seasoning that she puts in something. So you're looking for more tricks and things like that. And it's a fairly profitable venture for content creators. I have a guy that I kind of casually know. I met through a friend of mine, and he does like audiovisual stuff. And again, he went to film school, but he does audio video setups and surround sounds and things like that. And he did a YouTube video, and it was a tutorial. And of all the YouTube videos he'd ever done, this was the most successful. I mean, it had hundreds of thousands of views just because it was a tutorial thing.
Yeah. Well, there's a gamer a game streamer that I follow, Darkness49, and he does his smoked meat stuff, and talks about that all the time on his gaming stuff. And
yeah,
if I had the time.
Yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of YouTube videos. Like I watch movie trailers, and occasionally, like if I'm on a project at the house and I get frustrated with something, I'll look it up on YouTube and look for find a quick tutorial. But I'm not somebody to sit and watch like somebody cook for an hour or play video games for an hour. I have ADHD, and you lose my concentration within if you haven't done what you need to do in about 10 minutes, I'm done. I'm checked out.
Yep. That's kind of how I feel about some TV shows. Like, if I don't feel like I'm into it in the first 10, 20 minutes, or if I'm just if suddenly you see me getting up and doing dishes while the show's on, there's something wrong.
There probably wasn't a very good show.
But I've been trying, a lot of people have been telling me, oh, you should get into Brain. Wow. Yep. Nope. That train's gone. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah, the station without her, folks.
No, there's so many different shows on TV that I can't get into, and I've absolutely tried to get into some of the shows, and it's as soon as I hear, well, just wait, it gets better in the second and third season. I should not have to wait 3 seasons for it to get better. That
was me with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was hyped for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I watched the first season is such a grind. It really is. But then and they're right, by the second season, they start to really tie it into what's going on in the movies. I think season 2, I think they tied into the Winter Soldier. And then from there, it starts to make sense and it pulls you in. But that first season, I'm like, Jesus, is this season over yet? I'm not into many of the characters, and the characters that I'm into just aren't holding my attention. And season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a tough one to get through.
Yeah. See, I watched the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then I think after that, I just had to, I felt like I needed to call it quits because it was all over the place. Same thing with Gotham. I absolutely loved the first season. I loved where it, the introduction of some of the characters, but as the show progressed, it just got worse.
Yeah. And I think that may be true with some of the genre shows. Some of those shows like that were just, what do you do? And some of it, maybe you're going in with built-in expectations. And when the show doesn't meet your expectation, you're like, okay, I'm checking out. This isn't where I thought we'd be by season 2. So if we're not there, then it's, it's not worth it to me to continue.
Even some of the acting, I just
really, I haven't watched the first episode of Gotham. My friend loved it. He raved. He's like, man, you got to watch the show. I'm like, I'll get to it. There's a list of 55 shows that I need to watch, and Gotham is number 39 on that list. So.
And I mean, I even tried watching the Archie stuff, Sabrina the Teenage
Riverdale.
Witch and Riverdale. I tried, and I just the acting just
some of those CW shows are hard to get into. We started watching The 100, and as a concept, The 100 is brilliant. Like it really is as a concept, it grips you. And then you get into the acting and you're like, this one's not holding me as much as I thought it was going to, but I'm going to try and stick with it. I think we made it to the end of season 1, but it's been coming up on 2 years since we've even looked at it.
Yeah. I just feel like if you're going to have dramatic, theatrical actors portray characters, you need to teach there needs to be a level where the other actors kind of step up and start acting the same, or if you have like a seasoned actor, teach the theatrical actors to stop acting like theater actors.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I also think some of that, you and I are probably a little bit older than their target demo, so they're people that they're trying to reach probably don't think about those little nuances like you and I do. Yeah,
I guess so. But it just got too much. The overacting got too much, and some of the actors, and God rest his soul, but Luke Perry being one of the best actors on that show, there was an issue.
That's a shallow. So, quick question for Brian: is that the okay? That is Dynamite. That is there now. Is that going to be live, or are they taping that?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'd assume it's going to be live because the show airs tonight because they were preempted. I think Dynamite usually airs on Wednesday night, and they were preempted for something. So I'd imagine it's a live show.
Okay, who's that?
Oh, they're watching from Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, I would think it's live.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is. I'm not really I don't watch AEW mainly. Well, there's a few reasons. The biggest one being we don't have regular TV, like regular cable. We have everything we do is through streaming. So I haven't watched a live episode of anything in probably a decade. And just there's only so much wrestling that, my girlfriend is going to tolerate in this house. So I've got to pick and choose my wrestling viewing kind of, and she even asked me that a couple nights ago. We were talking about something, and either we saw an advertisement for AEW or Ring of Honor or something. She's like, do you watch that one? I'm like, not really. She's like, how come? I'm like, because you wouldn't accept me watching any more wrestling. There's already Raw on Monday night, NXT on Tuesday night, SmackDown on Sunday night, a pay-per-view once a month. And then occasionally they have really good documentaries and stuff like that. I'll watch the documentaries. So, that's probably 2, 5, 7, 8 to 10 hours a week consumed by wrestling. And I think that's probably the upper limits of her tolerance with that. So I really don't consume any more wrestling than that unless it's just me on my own, and then I'll try and find it somewhere. But yeah, so I really am not. I know who's on AEW, but I don't follow it.
Yeah, I haven't watched wrestling in so long, and I sometimes I feel like I'm a hack when Brian and Nicole start talking about wrestling. I'm just like, you guys tell me.
Yeah, tell me what's cool in the wrestling industry these days, because I don't know. Well, I will say this, as far as wrestling fans go, and there's going to be different arguments either way. There's going to be a lot of people that will, claim, oh, it was so much better back, blah, blah, blah. Get out of here with that crap. Right now, if you're a wrestling fan, there is no better time to be a wrestling fan because there's so much content. And some of that is thanks to, the digital age and streaming and things like that. I mean, you've got MLW, you've got GCW. There's easily 5 or 6 wrestling brands that are putting on something a little bit different that have some type of either streaming access or a national TV deal. Like you can find it somewhere. And even if you're not a WWE fan, because there's a lot of people that, have felt like WWE has just turned into more of an entertainment industry than they want their pro wrestling show to be. And so they've turned away from that and they want something a bit more traditional. And there's a lot of more traditional pro wrestling shows out there that we didn't have even 10 years ago. There were a lot of some of these indie promotions that were out there, gained some traction, got some sponsors, got some financial backing, got themselves some streaming rights. Like there's a local guy here. Actually, he did a show last night. It's Atomic Revolutionary Wrestling, based 20 minutes down the road from where I am now. They've got a weekly show on Fight TV, and they do pay-per-views once every couple of months. And this is just a local show with 200-300 people tops in the audience. So I mean, there's such a wealth of pro wrestling content out there. If you enjoy it, there's something out there for everyone, and it's so much fun. It really is such an amazing entertainment medium.
And you know what? I think I prefer the indie content than the professional TV version of wrestling. Anyway. So once the live shows start up again at the bars, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. Sometimes the indie shows can be fun live. Before the world fell to hell with COVID, we had a few. There's in my immediate area. There's two. Let's see. There's Riot Pro Wrestling. There's Atomic Revolutionary down in Vero. There's what the hell's the name of that one in Vero? I forget the name of it. But then there's 2 or 3 promotions in Orlando, which is an hour away. So there's a ton of just independent professional wrestling within 45 minutes drive from where I'm sitting. And that's pretty amazing because, again, we didn't have that 10 years ago. Yeah. We had indie promotions, but not like what people are doing now. These people have got little, minor TV deals in minor markets and things like that. So it's cool to be able to go and there's nothing like a live indie show. Like that's because you get TV crowds, and TV crowds tend to try and hijack TV shows because, hey, I'm on TV, so let me act silly. But when you go to an indie show, those are people who genuinely paid money to come and watch a wrestling show, and those crowds are awesome. Mm-hmm. Like they're so much fun to be in.
Yeah, and I have a couple friends who are in the indie wrestling circuit. Trying to get them on the show, by the way, Adam Knight. It's really hard because they're either touring with the wrestling group, or they're doing promotions for releasing their books, or something. And something else comes up, and so once in a while I'll see Adam out and about somewhere, and it's like, and we'll chat about it. We'll chat just for a few moments, and then it's like, so when can I get you on the show? I don't know.
And that's just it. If he's dedicating his existence to being a pro wrestler, it's a full-time gig. Yeah. Like you've got to promote yourself. You've got to promote the shows you're on. Sometimes they're working multiple shows because depending on how good he is or how long he's been in the industry, he's probably not making a whole lot per show. So if you want to sustain your lifestyle, you've got to work a ton of dates a month and try and make that money. Then you've got to promote yourself. You've got to, buy new gear. And, if you're doing, and again, a lot of these guys do the podcast circuit and things like that. So and these are all things that we didn't have when we're going back to 97, 98 when I was in the business. There were no podcasts. Like there were dirt sheets and, local mags and things like that. If you were lucky enough for somebody to come and want to get an autograph with you, or not an autograph, but an interview with you, but not like it is now. I mean, there's, like we talked about, maybe 45 minutes ago, there's hundreds, if not thousands of pro wrestling podcasts. And these people are trying to promote their brand on those things. And that's what you got to do to get yourself out there, especially in a world where not everyone is going to go to AEW. Not everyone is going to go to WWE. Not everybody is going to make those big name payday contracts. So you got to find the money somewhere. And the money is in the self-promotion.
Yeah. And I have another friend who is like a promoter for wrestling. Like he's always doing something somewhere. Yeah. And like he gets all the wrestlers together, and he's like, okay, we're gonna do this show circuit down in the States somewhere, and it's like he's gone the majority of the year doing this, and the odd time that he is home, he's either injured or he's just like he just finished touring.
Yeah. I mean, it's a circus. It really is. It's a carnival. And, there's a reason why they call them carnies. It really is. It's a carnival, and you have to travel. It's just, I mean, even WWE, pandemic aside, they were on the road 300 days a year.
Yeah. And do you ever miss the touring though?
I didn't do a whole lot on the road. Like I said, again, I didn't get as deep into the water as my friend did. Again, I had a decent job, and I was dedicated to that job. So I didn't immerse myself as deeply into the pro wrestling as I could have, or if I wanted to make it bigger than I did, I should have. Yeah. But there are aspects of it I miss. I miss being at shows. I miss performing in front of people. Like if I weren't a 48-year-old man with, a list of injuries, even as late as maybe last 4 or 5 years, I was trying to find a way to go out and be a part of it somehow. Even if I just went to the show and did like a referee thing or, an announcing thing or even a manager spot, I was still, and actually the last time I got into a ring was 3 or 4 years ago this Thanksgiving. A friend of mine was dating a local guy, and he put on a show just down the road. And, we were talking, and, I took my daughter and I asked him, I was like, hey, before you guys get started, you mind letting the old man get in the ring and run the ropes a little bit and take a couple bumps? He's like, nah, man, go ahead. So I got in the ring and got to run the ropes a little bit and mess around. I got my kid in there and showed her a couple of things. And yeah, you bet your ass I missed it. It was, but again, I need to be realistic. I'm 48 years old. I'm broken. I'm not in the shape that I was in 20 years ago. I'm not in bad shape for my age, but I don't have any business out there with these young kids putting my body through what they are. And that was a little disappointing of a pill to swallow. It
looks like one of my team members is trying to promote the Kickstarter for Roadkill Rampage. I don't know who's doing that, but yeah, no, thanks. That was one of I interviewed the guy for that, so that was kind of cool. But no, with would you ever return to the wrestling circuit?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I probably would. There's no way in hell I could put my body through like a regular thing, but to be involved in it in some way, shape, or form, absolutely. If I ever have the free time, there's a guy locally. His name's Alex Porteau, and he was an old WWE guy back in the mid-late 90s. Alex the Pug Porteau. He's got a school here locally. He's got a promotion. He does his own shows. And I've talked to Alex a couple of times. I was trying to do a thing with my friend I was telling you earlier. I think off camera, I have the friend of mine with glioblastoma. I was trying to find a way before whatever happens with him, whether he starts to deteriorate or what, to get him to, because I know Alex has some contacts still in WWE. I wanted to see if there was a way to get my friend to, because NXT tapes in Orlando. And I was going to, see if I could get him over to the NXT tapings and see if we could get there before the taping and see if I could just if they would let us get in the ring just so that he could say, hey, I made it into a WWE ring, and that was just something that I wanted to do for him. So I reached out to Alex. We weren't able to make that happen because of the pandemic. There are so many safeguards in place. They're not just going to let somebody willy-nilly into the building, regardless of the situation, which I respect and I understand. I get it. But yeah, I tried to set that up for him. And so I have an open line of communication with Alex, and he kind of knows who I am. He was a much, much more established person than I was, in the business. So for him to even vaguely remember what I may have done 20 years ago is cool enough for me. But yeah, I've reached out to him, and at some point, if my chaotic life ever frees up enough time that I can go to Orlando and maybe hook up with him and maybe do a couple things, I'd get back in. Yeah. Just because, and again, with no intent on trying to make a career out of it, just something that I would do because I love the business.
Yeah. But you seem to be happy. You're in the healthcare profession now. Right?
I am. Yes.
And you seem like you're enjoying that.
I am. It's like any other job. If you had to ask me, I'd rather be on a beach somewhere with a drink in one hand and, not have to worry about work again. But as the job goes, it is very rewarding. It's very satisfying. And it's, it pays me a comfortable living.
Yeah. And I'm happy that you found your comfort in podcasting and found your level of your life. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
I've seen you grow into this your hobbies, and I know you were in a dark place years ago, and I'm glad that you got out of it and found your happenness. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. It was a road. It was one hell of a road.
Yeah.
I won't lie to you, but yeah, I'm in a much better place than I was maybe 12 years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and to have your friends be there for you in a time like that too, that's where you need your friends the most.
And there's a list of people to thank that got me through that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And that's why I always say, if you ever need a chat, message me,
Absolutely. You and I go quite a ways back, and I have always appreciated this between the two of us. I know we don't talk as often, since neither one of us are YouTubing like we used to. But we do try and check in with each other, and I've always appreciated this relationship.
And you are one of my good friends, so I'm
I appreciate
I don't
that.
know.
Thank you.
I don't know what I would do without having you, to look up to. So,
well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me on. This is
problem.
twice I've been on with you, and I've loved it both times.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you too, and I love listening to your shows and watching your stuff. So, I know you were big into like the whole fitness stuff, so I hope that continues.
It does, as my body, as it gets older and the injuries start to mount. I just purchased about $800 worth of gym equipment that's sitting in my garage that I'm about to start getting into. I got a couple other little pieces I got to get for it, and then I'm going to start working out again.
Okay, excellent. I look forward to all the challenges that you go through. So
I'll be sharing those on Twitter as I go. I'm going to start being a little more active on Twitter. I think that's part of why I don't reach a big audience, because I hate Twitter. Like, if I wasn't trying to promote my podcast, I probably would have left Twitter 2 years ago, because Twitter sucks. God, it really is just such a cesspool. But I am trying to promote the podcast, and so I do try to keep those connections relevant.
All right, so tell us where we can find your podcast.
Primarily, it is on anchor.fm. It is the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. Also, we can be heard on Spotify. Once my tech idiot self figures it all out, it'll probably be on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, but primarily anchor.fm and Spotify.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to end the show here, but you're always welcome to join us again. I'm sure Brian and Nicole would love to have you come in and chat.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that. So did you guys always the same time on Saturday for this show?
Yeah.
All right, then I will, I will definitely try and free up this block of time on Saturday and see if we can do this one time.
Excellent.
All right, my dear.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks for having me on. And for those of you who showed up, thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm GW Amateur.
I'm Dina Marie.
I'm Sage Ia.
I'm Thomas Carter Rochester.
Hey, I'm David Thompson.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Mia.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Hey there, this is Dave Adams.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Rose.
Jerome Conner here.
Hey guys, it's Josh Bauer.
Willow Schuyler.
I'm Cosplay Michael.
It's your boy Country.
I'm Ryan Permison.
And I'd like to ask you guys,
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please
Subscribe.
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 Please subscribe to HWWS
Web TV.
Great bunch of people.
and don't forget to smash the bell.
Ring that bell.
Smash that bell.
Hit that bell.
Hit the bell to be notified.
Hit the bell to get notified of new shows.
And videos.
You're going to want to do that, so do that soon. So we can cross that 20,000 mark.
And get us to 100,000 subscribers
To 1 million and 10 million and 100 million.
on HWWS.
Web TV.
You really like it. I guarantee it. Thank you.